Hi, friends. It's Sarah, the host of the Home for Humanity podcast, a place where I have conversations offering a holistic view of the real estate industry and all of the complexities that it entails. I talk to people about feeling at home in your body and feeling at home in your family, feeling at home in your house, feeling at home in your neighborhood, and feeling at home here on the earth in connection to nature. In this conversation with Frida Soerensen, we talk about mental fitness and the very, very common saboteurs that come up and inner critics that keep us from accomplishing the things we want to accomplish. I came to this conversation with a little bit of very normal business kind of stress, and because Frida works specifically with female entrepreneurs for stress management, which we get into and why that's a specific thing, like what do women struggle with specifically with entrepreneurship. We get into all of it. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation and learn as well how to strengthen what she calls the sage muscle, because all those voices that come up, it takes practice into recognizing them and what to do with it. And that's part of feeling at home with ourselves, is this mental fitness that Frida specializes in. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and continue to follow along with me on my journey and how to find a home for my human self, which is more than just a thing that needs a roof, right? All these aspects of our humanity, the sustainability of our situation, the sustainability of how we're living on land, and all the connection and disconnection that's interwoven. So keep following along. I hope you enjoy this interview and the exercise that Frida starts us off with here. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hello, Frida.
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you so much for joining the Home for Humanity podcast. And I can't wait to dive in on what home and connection mean for you. And right before we started recording, we were mentioning today's a good day to talk about entrepreneurial stress, because I have a little bit right now. So would you like to start us off today with an exercise for me and for everyone in the future who's listening on a little centering, self-regulating tip?
Yeah, I would love to, and very honored to be able to open up, this space for our conversation and for everyone listening. So I'd love for us to do a little bit of what we in positive intelligence call PQ repping. And it's a series of little grounding things, little grounding techniques. And I'll guide you through that. So get nice and comfortable in your seat. Just move around. I'm definitely going to do that. Maybe lean back in your seat. Make sure that your spine is nice and straight. You can have your feet on the floor. That's super great too. And then if you would like to close your eyes, feel free to do that, or you can keep them open, whatever feels good for you. And we're going to start with simply feeling your body in your seat. So feeling the heaviness of your sit bones, your buttocks in your seat, feeling your feet on the floor, feeling your arms or your hands resting wherever they're resting, and just noticing if what it's resting on is soft or hard or warm or cool. And then from there, we're going to go on to feeling your breath. So just taking 3 deep breaths. If you like, you can put a hand on your belly. And just for 3 breaths, noticing your belly expand out into your hand and then come back down. So see if for another 2 breaths, you can bring your whole attention just to the feeling of your belly expanding in and then contracting back down. Taking some deep breaths here. That's really great. And then let's do some PQ reps with sound. So when you're ready, take a moment to listen out to the sounds that are in your environment. So maybe picking out a sound that's far away from you. So what's the furthest sound you can hear? And what's a sound that's closer to you, maybe just outside the room that you're in or the building you're in? And then the sound that is closest to you could be the sound of your own breath or the sound of your own heartbeat. Great. So now to my favorite PQ reps, I would love for you to just bring your fingertips together and just begin to slide one hand, the fingertips of one hand, very, very gently down the fingertips and palms of the other hand. And really just feel the delicious tingling sensations of your fingertips sliding up and down. Maybe just doing two more breaths as you do this and really getting into the tingling sensation. Nice work. And then when you're ready, you can bring your hands back down to your lap. And then opening your eyes when you're ready to do so. So welcome back. Those were just some very quick little exercises to bring you back into your body, after a busy day or recentering.
Wow. Thank you so much for that guidance.
You're welcome.
I am amazed every time at what coming home to the breath can do for my attention and my presence, and just feeling my weight here in the place that I am is just a practice that I come, is just hard. It's hard to stay with. So
Yeah.
that is, tell me about how that's related, what we just went through, the work that you do, and a little bit about your story and how you got into the work that you are in now and why you do it.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big mouthful.
And you can
Yeah.
kind of emphasize, and we'll get into it more, but kind of your story and how you got into your work.
Yeah, no worries. So let me introduce myself. My name is Frida Soerensen. I'm a positive intelligence coach, a mental fitness coach, we also call it, for women. And through my coaching, I help women become more confident in dealing with challenging things that happen in life. And through that work, I also develop, greater efficiency and performance, greater mental health and well-being, and relationships, improve their relationships as well. So this work is really not just about being better at business or not just about being better at handling stress, but it's actually overall it improves how we show up in different areas of our life. So I got into coaching women for stress, actually, to start with. So I come from a social work background. I was working in Australia for 13 years. And through my own personal experience with stress through my career, I discovered things like yoga. I know that Sarah also practice yoga, and I got into meditation, and I got so excited about these practices, how they get us in touch with deeper levels of ourselves. They're not just relaxation practices for relaxation, but they get us really into diving deep into ourselves. So what I did, I quit my social work career. I moved to the Philippines and I started a small wellness business there. I was teaching yoga right before Corona hit. And then, of course, all manner of face-to-face training, teaching was out of the question at that time. So, and at the time, actually, a lot of the women, well, a lot of my students were women. They were professional women, and they were business owners and entrepreneurs. And it kind of just happened that way. But these were the people that were, I guess, drawn to working with me. So during Corona, I thought about offering stress management to female entrepreneurs and business owners. I don't know if you probably remember, like during Corona, there was this opportunity where people were just reevaluating their values, and they were really thinking about what's important to them, and mental health and stress was also really something that came, the awareness around our mental health and dealing with stress was something that came up. So this was really relevant to offer. So yeah, so that's how I got into coaching female entrepreneurs and business owners.
I love hearing that, like, oh, that's just sort of how it happened a little bit. Like there's always that little, like, it seems like you have found a groove here in the type of people that you work with and the why. And you shared a little bit about who they are, but do you have any stories like of why female entrepreneurship, what you have seen, like threads of patterns or maybe stories that you've seen, and then the success that learning self-command, and maybe you can get into that a little bit, like what has learning about self-command and mental fitness done for women who deal with a lot of stress, and maybe entrepreneurial stress specifically is related to that, but what have you seen shift in people who like already seem to command their own lives?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. There are a lot of common threads that I've seen. I mean, I've experienced it for myself. I'm also a solopreneur, and have hit a lot of barriers. So of course I coach. The reason why women come to me is because they are stressed out, anxious, they want to have more work-life balance. So something that I see very, very often is this struggle to balance everything. So there's the work, there's the business or the work, there's the family, and then there's also their own health and well-being that all have to be balanced. And it's all life, we talk about work-life balance, all of it is life. And the trick is really, how do we create good enough boundaries for ourselves so that we put enough energy into our career, but there's also, we don't drop the family on the floor, or we don't burn out in the process. So the common thing I do see is that there is a tendency as an entrepreneur to be so focused on the work that it's kind of all consuming. And I've worked with women who have completely had to quit their jobs, had to go into rehabilitation physically, because their bodies were just so depleted, basically. And I've also seen women who, have damaged relationships because they have just put all their focus on this one thing. So it's and it's also, there is a report by Resurgo, I think, that came out. It said that 79% of female entrepreneurs actually have mental health issues, which is not great.
79.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So some level of it, and it's because there is just so much pressure that this group of women, particularly are dealing with, because it's true that there are more female entrepreneurs than ever, and there's also more women in leadership than ever, but women are still looking after most of the responsibilities in the home, and with their families, right? So they're still doing all the work that they were doing before, plus they're also now creating businesses and doing a lot of leadership in the world. So I think I got a little bit off topic, but this is probably one of the main blockages for this group.
For women right now. I mean, I'm curious. I do want to get to why, or like the successes that you've seen in this pattern through what like specifically you were teaching them. But I'm also now curious, like why is this happening? It just seems like maybe, and I'm not, I'm not going to say like, I'm here to speak for all women right now. Like we're not having that kind of conversation, but why are we just in between like like the way that women hold responsibility in business and in home? I mean, like I see this in multiple cultures, and maybe you've seen it in multiple cultures too, that women are taking on more. And do you think there's like an equity in that and responsibility with men? I mean, this is like a huge conversation.
It's a huge topic.
But
just to touch a little bit on it, there are other challenges that women have to deal with in the corporate space, for example, and in the workplace. So, I mean, particularly for women who are entrepreneurs, it's actually it's harder to get funding, for example, if you're a female entrepreneur than if you're a male entrepreneur. And there are a lot of things there, because it's still the way that you have to present yourself in business and in the workplace is still very much dominated by kind of masculine traits. So, one woman walking into a boardroom or there's a group of men in the panel, it's harder for her to really set respect. So there's that. So there's there's a difficulty in accessing funding, which also then obviously puts stress on these small businesses financially. And there's also, I mean, again, this is from different reports saying that there's also issues of sexual harassment and kind of discrimination against women in the space. And this is unfortunately something we don't really talk much about, we just see the glossy LinkedIn posts and the beautiful stats that so many women are now in business and more than ever are in leadership. But there is still a long way in terms of that we kind of have equal grounds to to progress from.
And especially in the work-life balance world. I mean, like hearing in some ways there's no such thing as work-life balance. And I think you use the word solopreneur, like there's no such thing as solopreneur either. We always have to support like these interconnected systems of each other. And that is a more feminine way of business that I think is coming to light. And like that we are, I think women are at this point in this context, this symbol of like, okay, here we are stepping up to do this I envision like in the 40s, it was like the men are off to war. So now the women are stepping up and doing the work. And that's this like theme of this century. It feels like it's like, okay, here we are, but our bodies are broken and ragged. And the truth is, so are yours from working that hard too. So how can we use all of the tools that all of us bring to the table, which kind of gets into your work too, seeing these parts. So maybe you can get into that next, like, what are the tools that you actually offer people to work through this?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned that I'm a mental fitness coach, and I'm training under positive intelligence. This is it started off, it was a book written by Shirzad Shamin. He's is a Stanford lecturer and the founder and creator of Positive Intelligence. They have a beautiful flagship program that that helps us build mental fitness. And the basis of this is that we call it mental fitness and not mental health, because mental fitness is something that we all need, you know, just like a lot of us go to the gym or do yoga or do some kind of physical practice so that we maintain our bodies, so that our immune system is good. We can, you know, go through some sleepless nights. We can get through a huge project without completely, you know, burning out. But so do we need mental fitness. And I want to give an analogy, which is, you know, if we were hiking, and if you're at an average physical fitness, you might be able to go up and down some smaller medium hills and hikes, you know, without maybe getting too physically strained. But if we were going to put a mountain in front of you and you're just at average physical health and you have no previous training or anything to climb a mountain, that's going to be super hard for you to start trekking out Mount Kilimanjaro, for example. You know, you're going to get stressed out. Your body's going to start hurting. You're going to get out of breath. You're probably going to quit halfway, or it's going to be very painful to get up that mountain, right? So it's the same thing with mental fitness. It's like if you have an average mental fitness, you might be able to cope with the normal day-to-day things that happen, as long as nothing too dramatic happens. But the moment something big comes into your life, you know, a huge mountain comes into your life, like you lose your job, or you just had a baby and you haven't slept for 6 months, or there's an issue in your relationship, or a pandemic happens, you know, none of us were prepared for a pandemic. And this is the reason why we need mental fitness. We need to have the mental resilience to go, okay, now there's a mountain in front of me. I have some skill to deal with this mountain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm thinking of the handful of teachers I've had who really prioritized resiliency, and martial arts really, like that kind of teaching taught me that, like, we don't practice fighting to go out and fight. We practice it to be prepared for when the mountain does come, or like, or when something does come into attack. Like there's always that possibility. COVID did teach us that. Like we never know when the world could just shut down. Are we ready for that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's like we need to develop the skills so that when it happens, we have the muscle, you know. So we are also, just like physical fitness, we are building mental fitness muscles. So in positive intelligence, we have, through extensive factor analysis, they found out that there are just 3 mental fitness skills that we need to develop. And we'll go a little bit deeper into this. But the first one is what is the right wording for it? I just say being able to intercept your saboteurs. So your saboteurs are the critical, harsh voices inside your head that says, you're an idiot, you don't know how to do this, who do you think you are? I had all of these thoughts. I nearly quit my business last year because I was overwhelmed with deep self-doubt about why I should think that I can go out and help people. Why should I be able to change lives? Who am I? Who do I think I am? And then other thoughts like, wow, you're just going to fail anyway. Why try? So I'm guessing, all of us have had these kind of thoughts. But these thoughts, if you're trekking up a mountain and you're saying to yourself, I can't get up this mountain, I'm so unfit, I'm never going to do it, I'm just going to lie down and die. It's
Then
going to
that's
be
what
a
will
very...
happen. Then you will just lie down. Yeah.
It's not going to be a very pleasant climb if even you do start, because you haven't been defeated, from the beginning by these thoughts. So I'm very, very familiar with this kind of, with this pattern. And I used my own experience to go, okay, what's going on here? If I have all the resources to create a successful business, I have the time, I have the funding, I have space, what's the last thing? And what is really keeping most of us back from doing what we really want to do is what we call the saboteurs. And they've found that there are only 10 saboteurs. There's only 10 ways that we can actually sabotage ourselves. And I know, Sarah, you mentioned that you've done your saboteur assessment. Yay.
Yes. No, go on. I'm sorry. I was thinking
No,
about...
that's okay. Yeah. That's
No.
okay. So there is your mage, the master of all the saboteurs is your judge. And you will probably recognize this voice. It's the voice that wakes you up in the middle of the night and says, oh my God, you're not going to be able to do that presentation tomorrow. You're not prepared. Other people will do much better than you, and keep you up for 3-4 hours. And then you wake up tired and exhausted the next day, and you actually end up not doing very well, maybe. So sabotage, right? The judge also criticizes other people. That person looks fat. Why does, they're not doing that great. I wouldn't have done that if I were them, criticizing other people, finding fault in other people. And the third way that we judge is actually our own circumstance that we're in. Like the coronavirus. Oh, when is this going to end? This is so bad. Can't we just be over it? I don't want to do this anymore. This kind of thing. So again, very difficult to actually get through the challenges when we have this kind of these kind of thoughts in our minds, right? So the first mental fitness muscle is actually to learn to notice when these voices come up. So, and there are 9 other saboteurs. There's just to name a few. There's controller saboteur. You might know some of these people. They just like to micromanage and control everything, and in the end, it ends up sabotaging their relationships with people. There's the avoider. Avoid anything that's uncomfortable, right? And then in the end, problems have gotten so huge that it's even harder to deal with. There's the overachiever, the stickler, the hyperachiever. There's 9 more, which I won't mention. But when these different saboteurs collaborate, that's when we sabotage ourselves, and we don't make the best decisions for us. So I'm going to share a resource a little bit later where you can actually do your own assessment and see what kind of saboteurs you have, so that when you notice the thoughts come in your mind, you can say, oh, that's my controller coming up, or oh, that's my judge. Yeah.
It's not a super long or extensive or painful quiz. It's
No.
very fun. So I
No,
highly
not at
recommend
all.
it. Um,
Yeah, and have
there,
fun with it. It's not about things
and
being
it's
hard, artists, and
right. I think it is about like hearing those parts within, like just having that language and that internal landscape of like, oh, there are multiple people at the table here that potentially are like collaborating and conspiring, to continue this negative narrative that has been patterned into me, and just noticing like, oh, why am I even questioning that right now? Helps me see. I mean, there was one, it was a different model of like a round table of parts. I really love whole systems work where you can like look at whole like this. And one that stuck out to me at that period of time, it was during COVID, like at mid 2020, late 2020. And the survivor was this character that came in, and I was like, oh, that person has been running the show for years. And it was that realization that made me want to actually go learn more survivor skills, which is part of why I came up here to Washington to practice like bushcraft skills and nature connection skills, and like grabbing hold of that part was for me very empowering. And I hope that with people do the quiz and the assessment, and they start to see these parts within themselves, like really confronting them is really deep, big, awesome work. So I highly recommend. How has that been for you? And maybe are you do you want to go there in that direction right now? Do you think like what the
Yeah, I mean, sure. I would just like to say that that's such a great example of because if I can just mention the other skill, the first skill I mentioned, and the second skill is actually strengthening your sage. And you said it so beautiful. It's like there's this war. I mean, I don't know if that were the words, but there is this war inside ourselves of all these voices. And there are actually these two powers inside you. One is your saboteur that comes with all the negative energy and completely deflates and disempower us. And we're stuck in fear, right, from listening to these voices. And then on the opposite side, there's the sage, which is your empowered inner self. It's your pure essence that has a lot of wisdom that doesn't, it doesn't get hurt so much because we're so used to being stuck in this survivor kind of mode. And I love that you brought because the sage perspective is actually to see everything you experience as a gift and opportunity. And what you did so beautifully there with noticing that you were in survivor, where you actually turned your survivor into a gift and an opportunity to gain empowerment and confidence. And you turn it into something positive, right? That strengthened you. So that's actually, yeah, that's actually a perfect example of how instead of acting out of fear, we're acting from, how can I explore this? How can I actually make the most out of this? And in answering your question, me nearly quitting my business, I did a similar thing. I'm still in the process of really getting my business off the ground, but realizing that I had all these internal struggles and that the self-doubt is what's holding me back, and really going there and going, what can I learn? And from my own learning, how can I help others? Because I've been there and I know exactly what it's like. So how can I use the struggle as a way to help other people deal with their own struggle and get up their mountain with grace and with wisdom, and maybe with some fun, as opposed to the kind of pain that we put ourselves through. Mm.
What do you think would happen if more entrepreneurs, like, really what you just said about like emphasizing helping others get up their mountain? There's a little wren right there. And what would happen if people like entrepreneurs helped others like emphasize get up their mountain instead of this idea of like individual success? And that's what entrepreneurship is. Because I mean, even this word entrepreneurship kind of puts up this like, oh, business mogul type person out to make money.
Mm.
But I think of there are so many entrepreneurs, and the reason I wanted to talk to you about this specifically is like, it's a beautiful thing, this ability to be like, I have a vision and I'm going to go make this vision happen. And there is a lot of loneliness in that. And I know that's something that you talked about, you help women with, is like this feeling of
Yeah.
loneliness
Yeah.
that comes with whatever the hell kind of burden we're putting on ourselves with entrepreneurship. But in my mind, I don't want a job. I don't want like a regular, that's not how I want to spend my career or my life, or the thing that feeds me that I put back out in the world. And so, how is like practicing this sage muscle related to practicing entrepreneurship to you?
Sorry, can you repeat that? It just froze.
Oh no, did I
Just
say?
then.
Okay. Yeah, my question actually distilled into, how is practicing the sage muscle
Mm,
related to practicing entrepreneurship?
yeah. Ah, that's a beautiful question,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So let me explain a little bit about the second mental muscle, which is the sage, building up the sage. There are 5 sage powers that we can build up. And this is your empathize. And I'm going to talk about, how when we put so much pressure on ourselves, as it doesn't really matter who we are, whether we're entrepreneurs or not, we put so much pressure on ourselves, we lose empathy towards ourselves. And if we don't have empathy for ourselves, we also become very critical of other people, right? So the first sage power is empathy. And that comes in, which is part of what I teach too, is that practicing self-love, practicing self-care, taking regular breaks. If you are working at your computer for 10 hours, you need a 10-minute break every 50 minutes. And then you need a longer break every 2 or 3 hours. That's really, and getting up and doing something that's physical, going for a walk, going for a
Thank
coffee with a friend.
thank you
Sorry.
for just thank you for just naming that. I just have to say, like, for those of you listening who work from your computer or at home, like, way more breaks, like at
Way more
least
breaks. Yeah.
at 50 minutes, go take a 10-minute walk. Like, that's a long time. You should be taking 10 breaks a day then, as
Yeah.
well as, that's a
Or
lot.
you do PQ reps, you do 30 seconds of rubbing your fingertips together, 30 seconds of putting your hand on your stomach. You can be in front of your computer, if you want, but put a timer on your phone. Yes, and here too, this is beautiful, doing it on your face, because this also, there's a lot of science around, it calms the nervous system, different parts of your body that you touch, so really looking after yourself. And then we also have more empathy for other people. We are so much nicer to other people when we feel the love from ourselves, So empathize power is a sage power. Then you have explore. So explore power is about if there is a challenge in your business or anywhere, rather than going into fear, we go, oh, put on your curiosity mode, your beginner's eyes, oh, look at this mountain I have to climb. Look at all the different rocks. What kind of tools might I need to climb this? What kind of support might I need? What knowledge don't I have that I need to gain? So instead of going into this frozen fear and then procrastination because we don't know what step to take next, instead we can go into, okay, let's explore this, right? Who knows who might be the person who can help me with this? Then there's innovate. This is similar to explore, but this is where we really get creative about different ways of, thinking outside the box. There's navigate, which is, there's an exercise where you visualize your older self when you are 80, 90 years old. What would that older self tell you about the situation? This is a great exercise just to do, if there's a choice you need to make that's hard, or if there's something where there's a problem you keep rehashing. Close your eyes, visualize, what you might look like as a 90, 80-year-old, and ask them for advice. Like, feel what they might say to you. And then there's the activate power. So you've got your empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate power. And your activate is get stuff done, right? So that's easy enough to say, right? There are these 5 powers that you have naturally. Go and connect to those powers.
Right. Go find your highest self.
Go find your powers. This is where self-command comes in, because the negative emotions that the saboteurs bring, they do have a purpose. Your negative emotions have a purpose, and that is to tell you that there is an issue or something needs to be addressed in your life, right? If you're angry, maybe someone crossed your boundary. If you're fearful, maybe there's just, you're unsure about what to do, or you feel unsafe. So it's like it's like the hand on the hot stove. You put your hand on the stove, you burn yourself, you take your hand off, right? The message is clear. It's painful, you take your hand off. It's the same with negative emotions. If there's fear, anger, disappointment, confusion, it's there to tell you that, hey, you need to get into action. But if you are in those negative emotions, it's very difficult to take action. If you're angry, you might lash out at people, right? Which is maybe not the desired action. So self-command is actually about stopping yourself. If you are in any kind of negative emotion, stop yourself and you do some PQ reps. You might not be able to close your eyes if you're in the middle of the office or someone's talking to you and you're feeling triggered, but you can feel your feet on the floor, for 3 breaths. You can feel your breath moving in and out. You can really look at the person that you're talking to. You can look at their hair, the shape of their eyes, the way their mouth moves. You can rub your 2 fingers together like this. And these little exercises, they really they interrupt the stream of negative thought and they bring you back into your body. And go for it.
Well, I want to know what you were about to say, what, but I mean, everything you've described so far. Well, first, can you explain what PQ stands for?
Yeah, so PQ stands for Positive Intelligence Quotient. So it's like emotional intelligence quotient, or EQ, or what's the other one? IQ.
IQ, right, okay.
But they've developed a way to actually measure mental fitness, mental fitness, your the muscle that you built in mental fitness, and that's what we call positive intelligence quotient.
All of it's describing sensory, like meditative sensory connection. Everything from the exercise we started with, from the way you described things earlier to like right now, like describing the lines on someone's face. Like I definitely, whenever I get overwhelmed, I find myself doing that, just slowly observing tiny, minute details about the situation. Cause I'm like, there's something that it's like, I don't know what to do. So I'm just gonna like just take stock here in this moment or something like that. But there's also what you're alluding to is like a positive like neurochemical connection that actually brings more, that quells the negativity, you're saying.
Yes. So what happens, and yes, you're right. So
Really amazing.
It is. So what they've actually done with the PQ is that they've just taken the foundations of meditation. At the very basis of meditation is really just your ability to bring your focus from one thing to your body, to your breath, to your senses, basically. And that does something in the brain. It starts by switching off your survival brain, because when you're feeling any kind of negative emotion, part of your survival brain is actually on. So, and it's very, very difficult to make good decisions, to think holistically and clearly, and to take clear, focused action if you are in survival mode, right? So the point of these exercises is actually to, okay, I've noticed my judge is coming up, feeling my heart rate going. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take 30 seconds, a minute of these little exercises. And then from that point, it is easier to switch into sage mode. And sage lives in the part of the brain that can manage emotions and that knows planning. And there's a lot of science behind it, which I won't get into. But it has access to a different part of the brain where positive emotions are developed or can come from. So even if it's still the same challenge, you can swap from negative emotion to a positive one, whether it's empathy, explore, innovate, activate, and coming from a sage perspective where you can go, okay, how can I find the opportunity in this situation? How can I find the gift in this situation? Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, maybe 3, maybe more. Always more. But the importance, what you're describing, like tapping into positive emotion, is really important for developing a sense of belonging and connect and feeling safe and at home. And I feel like the pinnacle of at least my work right now is like helping people feel at home, and the importance to access those positive emotions. I guess my question to you is like, what does feeling at home in the body mean? And what is the importance of like the comfort and the discomfort that comes with that? Like you're talking about positive and negative emotions, being able to access both of those, and both are important, but there is a ratio of like, if you're experiencing too much negativity and like it's almost impossible to feel safe and at home wherever you are. So like being able to develop the mental fitness into feeling at home in the self. Yeah. Why is feeling at home in the body a part of this, or important in the way of belonging?
Yeah, well, I mean, your your beautiful body and mind. I mean, it's the home of your soul, right? It's the home of who you are. So
It is.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, for me, that's a no-brainer. But unfortunately, in the way that we modern human beings are living right now, with all the technology and our phone, I mean, we should almost have a phone growing out of our hand soon. You know how much we are kind of plugged in, connected to the technology, but then disconnected to ourselves. And it's like most of us just walk around just being connected from the neck up, and we think that the just the head is important. um but you have to remember that your head is connected to your spine, to your body, and your body is have all these amazing, it has 5 senses that picks up all the data from the world around you, you know, your sight, smell, taste, and there's also an intuition, you know, a sixth sense where you can feel people's energy, and this all happens through your body. So if we're disconnected to this, um, for starters, we're not really experiencing reality as it is, because we are too busy listening to the saboteurs in our head saying, this is how it is, and that person is not right, and I'm not right, and the situation is wrong. And we are not really seeing clearly, like, this cup is a cup, you know? We're not really seeing we're not really seeing things for what they really are. We misinterpret each other as well. If we're disconnected to our own emotions, our own body, and our own senses, there's huge discrepancy in understanding other people too. Um, and to speak about discomfort, it's all part of being a human being. You know, like, feeling grief is so meaningful to your personality, to your growth as a human being. Feeling anger, it tells you that you need to stand up for yourself, or you need to set some boundaries. Feeling sadness means that you care deeply about things. You know, so this is all part of of this beautiful, you know, person that we are, and we should enjoy exploring, you know. So if we talk about the sage perspective, it's how do we, if we're going to climb that mountain anyway, how can we make it more enjoyable climbing that mountain, you know, because we don't know if there's going to be another pandemic, or we're going to lose our health or our jobs or our partners. But how do we make it more enjoyable and present, to us, to our own challenges and suffering, but also to other people?
You are
Yeah.
such a light. I mean, I just hearing you speak, I'm like, you are here to share this ability with humanity. And you're speaking about like the complexity of us as humans, like it's a part of us. It's, I don't know why, we don't know why, but pain is a part of the way we experience the world, just like joy and beauty and
Mm.
I mean, home for humanity to me is about like whatever the hell complex creature we are, we need a lot of things, you know. We need
Yeah.
shelter, we need water daily, we need macronutrients, micronutrients, we need
Mhm.
warmth, we need cold sometimes, so not too often,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we need connection, we need all of these, we need our spine to not get too activated in the hindbrain, you know, we need
Mhm.
all of these needs. And I'm just realizing now, like, or hearing that all these parts that we're talking about, and the ability to transition between them and recognize, like you're speaking to being able to recognize how to move between them. And we spoke before about like how do we feel safe in transition mode? And really
Mhm.
that question is like, how do we feel safe in the very moment where we get to come out of this saboteur and into this one, like a new part. And so now I have only two more questions, because it's what can you say about that moment? Because it seems to come down to like the moment of recognition, or like a moment of choice, that I think doesn't get talked about enough. You know, identifying the parts is great, but actually shifting, I feel like we spend more time in the in between than we do like in the survivor, or in the sage, or in any of that. I think at least for me, I spend more time kind of in that deliberation, neutral state, or neutral body, and to like make a forward, this is my choice, seems to be where some activation power is. But what can you say about that moment of living in the in between? Like, it's so uncomfortable. Like we've talked about, even like, you know, renting a room in a place that you know you're going to be for a year, and it's like you're uncomfortable the whole time, but it's like, how do we feel safe in that little tiny bubble? Or what is that?
That's a great question. I mean, there are in-betweens that are just seconds, you know, which might be just a moment of feeling uncomfortable because someone triggered us with what they said. But as you talked about, there's also transitions, or when we were waiting for pandemic to end, for example. I think a lot of people were just waiting for it to end and then missing out on the opportunity to be in the here and now and spend time, you know, with the people who are in your environment, or call your parents, have longer chats with them because you're not at work as often, or whatever it is. So it's really about, so I think I want to talk about gratitude, because gratitude is also part appreciation, gratitude, empathy. Those are all part, you know, part of the empathize sage power. There is always something to be grateful for, whatever moment that you find yourself in. Right. So if it is a longer period of time that you're in this kind of transition, or you're not happy with the situation, coming into and feeling empathy, you know, if you can feel empathy for yourself in that situation, if there's other people that's involved, finding a way to feel empathy for them, and just remember that they also have a struggle. There's a war going on inside them between Shirzad Jamin calls it the your Darth Vader and your inner Jedi. You know, it's like Star Wars. It's Star Wars analogy here, comparison here, but imagine
all
that.
of the Star Wars mythos are alive in me always. So I'm
always.
like, yes,
Oh, that's great. I should have brought that out a little bit earlier. But if you can, you know, you can remember that whoever you have a conflict with, or you're not happy with, they have a similar battle going on inside them, and they are doing the very best they can. Maybe you can even imagine that they're a little 5-year-old, you know, that is struggling, and they don't know how to talk about their needs, or they don't have to express themselves, or so empathy, I would say, for yourself and other people in the situation. Before you try to be empathetic to other people, definitely bring it here first. You have to be giving yourself the empathy and the love and the self and the care, and finding something that you are grateful for in every day. The practice of how do I turn this into a gift and opportunity is also one of the big practices that we use in positive intelligence. And there's always a way, you know, if you're stuck in an bad apartment situation for a year, how could you turn that into, you know, maybe you spend that year writing a book, or a blog, or, you know, some other thing that that could then leave a legacy, even if this was a challenging time, I turned it around by doing this. Does that
Mm,
make sense? Mhm.
yeah,
And I mean, I
definitely.
could talk about this for hours, but I know that's
Yeah,
uh,
only have one more
yeah.
question, but I'm being reminded of what we were talking about earlier with like the power of women in the workforce is that we're kind of, or at least the zeitgeist feeling I get is like we're kind of like, okay, here we are, and like no more of this bullshit overwork, like, and just like sacrificing my body on the altar of like a good paying job or like career satisfaction. It's so much more than that, to lean on like empathy and turning that gift into like reaching out and helping is, I
Mm,
think, such a gift that going back to female entrepreneurs are
yeah,
really bringing to the table. And I see it over and over and over.
yeah.
It's like this work, there's no work-life balance. This is our work. This is who
It's
we
all
are.
life.
And I
Yeah, yeah,
deserve,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
and I deserve, peace and safety in the same way that I want that for
Mm,
others. And that's why we're doing what we do. And
mm.
so
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you for the
yeah.
work that you bring to the world and the light and positivity that you
Mm.
share with people who really need it.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sarah.
Frida.
Thank you.
My final question, and you can answer as short as you'd like, is
Yes.
what do you see right now that brings you hope
Mm.
for,
Mm.
maybe just brings you hope because
Mm.
I have a feeling you already have like a vision that you are kind of aiming toward. So maybe what brings you closer to that you see right now?
Yeah. I'm what brings me hope is that there is a movement, although it is still very small. There is a movement of people that are starting to become aware that they need to build this kind of inner resilience, this mental fitness, this know thyself. um,
Mhm.
and I suppose this also started a lot of it started during Corona. The coaching industry like boomed during this time. Online training, personal development, self-help books, all this stuff really boomed during this time. And I think, if there is a gift from what we just experienced, is that it's making people more aware. It made, it locked people up in a room with themselves, and they had to deal with what was on the inside because there were less things to distract them on the outside. Um, so I am hopeful because more people are wanting to do this kind of personal development work. And it means that the more people do this kind of work, it raises the consciousness, of the people on the planet. I mean, I know we have a huge way to go, but the more consciousness there are, the more individuals who are making better decisions for themselves and for their families, uh, the better decisions we can hopefully make for communities and hopefully countries. uh, Holding my breath, but we do have a younger generation that is really into global, taking social responsibility in the climate and things like that. So I'm hoping that there is a generation that will make better decisions for our planet. And I know that's really big vision, but we have to start one person at a time.
Yeah, and we got to hold that vision. I think, yeah, there's something. Thank you for that. That goes. It takes one person holding a vision to have multiple people holding a vision. And I think everything we've spoken about is we're talking about shifting culture, really, and
Yeah,
being
yeah.
able to really change around our priorities and it started with in here.
Mm, yeah.
This felt sense that we all kind of share. I mean, when we spoke for the first time, it's like, wow, we've never met. We live on opposite sides of the world, and yet we share this vision and
Yeah.
feeling that like we could do things differently. So yeah, thank you for exploring this rich territory with me,
Yeah.
and for
Likewise.
sharing.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you,
And
Frida.
and thank you for your great insight and your great questions. And yeah, that's really valuable. And yeah, I would love if we can share the saboteur assessment with everybody. It's
Perfect.
you can share the link, but it's a positive intelligence saboteur assessment. And if you're curious to know a little bit more about, what this means to you personally, you can get in touch with me. You can book a free call, and we'll do a consultation around your assessment. So
What's
yeah.
what's your website so people can book you?
Oh yes. It's fridasoerensen.com. Might be good to write it as well, because my name is a little bit a little bit long to spell.
I'll put the link.
Thank you
Well,
so much.
thank you, Frida, for helping us find a home for all of the parts of our humanity. So until we speak again.
Thank you. Bye.